Hello and welcome to Love Bay Radio. I'm Dr. Tapo and I'm happy to spend the next hour with you answering some of your questions, looking back at some of the topics that we've already discussed, and as always, supporting each other in our journey towards optimal, good mental health. Before we continue, just a reminder that the Mental Health Hour is for educational and informational purposes only. So I simply give information, I simply try to educate so that you can and should use that information to make informed decisions for your mental health or how you will support your loved ones and others in your community. Thank you, as always, again to our hosts at Love Bay Radio who make this hour possible, who give of their time, their energy, their passion, and love for our communities to make it possible for us to spend this time discussing our mental health. To get in touch with us, you can text 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299, or you can email infoluvbay@gmail.com, infoluvbay@gmail.com. I hope you've been having a great week. It's spring in Ontario, Canada. We had the disappointing eclipse last week. This week we're being comforted by lots of sunshine, and it's just really nice to be out and about when the sun is shining. It's good for our mental health. It's good for our spirits. It's good for even community. People tend to smile a lot more when they're enjoying the spring, and you're listening to the birds. You're starting to see the plants regenerating and the flowers outside. It's just really, really enriching, especially for me. I just find I love the spring. I love the summer. Maybe it's because I was born and raised in Africa. I don't know, but winters can be extremely difficult. And in the past, we've talked about seasonal affective disorder. We've talked about how sometimes the winter can cause some of us to isolate, not necessarily self-isolate, but conditions and circumstances during the winter can find us feeling quite alone and quite lonely. So it's nice when the spring comes because we're looking forward to a few months of sunshine, of being outside more, maybe socializing more. And for those of you who do tend to hibernate during the winter, I hope that you've started going out, started coming out of your shells, out of your homes. You started reconnecting with people, friends, family that you might have neglected through the winter months. So again, you can call or text us 437-778-3299 or email infolovebay@gmail.com. This week is my birthday. I'm pretty excited. On Thursday, I'll be celebrating my birthday. Some of you might know how old I'll be. Some of you might not. I challenge you to guess. Anyway, there's something about birthdays that make us reflect on where we are in life, what we've done with our lives. Have we made the right decisions? Are our lives unfolding the way we had hoped? Our dreams, our aspirations, our goals and purposes. So there's something about birthdays that just remind us to take stock. And it can also be a time when we feel like I've known some friends when their birthdays come around, they feel quite low because a lot of it has to do with, wow, I don't know, 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever it is. And I haven't achieved what I thought I would have at this point in my life, or different things didn't work out like we hoped they would. And so for me, it's just a time to really celebrate, especially the changes and growth that I see in myself. Not everything has been perfect. Not everything's the way I hoped or expected to be. And not everything I like, I don't get all the rewards that I might feel that I deserve, but it's definitely a time to be grateful for opportunities to grow that were used and taken, and being able to look at last year, I was this, I was hoping for that. I put my mind to it, I worked at it. So what if I lost here and there? But I'm alive. I'm doing fairly well by my own standard, rather than comparing yourself to other people. People have a tendency, especially with social media, right? Um, we tend to look up the people we went to school with, the people we worked with a few years ago, and all of that. And they're posting homes, they're posting cars, they're posting spouses and children and whatever it is. And it makes us start comparing. And if you have a birthday coming up, or at any point in your life, that habit of comparing yourselves to other people is just detrimental. We all have our own journeys, we all have our own purpose in life. If you're like me and believe that God created each of us with a purpose, focus on that. And if you haven't found your purpose, focus on finding it, rather than comparing yourself. And because anytime you compare yourself, one of two things happen. If you compare yourself to somebody, and perhaps you are more educated, perhaps you do have more money, or things worked out for you, and the person you're comparing yourself to hasn't had it as well, you become prideful and conceited. If it's the opposite, that this person has done better and all of that, you become jealous and envious. Like, I have never seen any benefit to your own soul or well being, as well as to others, of comparing yourself. Focus on who you are, where you want to be, by your measures, by your standards. Let's do away with the comparison, and especially based on things we're seeing that have been filtered and glossed up and designed to look like they're living their best lives or whatever. And they might be, they very well might be, but focus on your own journey, set your own goals, and avoid that trap of conceit or jealousy or envy and pride. And just be grateful for who you are and what you have, and work for what you need to work for, and you'll get there. Something I do tell a lot of young people, when they look at, and it can be frustrating. I tell young people this, but also I do talk quite a bit about newcomers and immigrants. When you leave your home country and you move to another place, and we always want things right away. We always want things immediately. You maybe in your native country, you were a bank manager, you had a huge house, you had all of this, and circumstances happen whatever way. You come to Canada or wherever else, and you have to start from scratch. And what you don't understand is, for you to be a bank manager in your home country, you started building that life from birth. That's the thing. Like, you didn't do that overnight. You built that life from birth, starting with the very simple parenting and socialization that you would have received from your family. And so it might feel like when you move to a new place, you're starting again. And in a lot of ways you are, but you cannot compare the two. You can't say, well, back home I was this and now I'm that, because you were not born in that country. You won't have the same advantages and privileges. Your path won't be the same. So focus on where you are, build the connections you need to build, do the work you need to do, and pace yourself. don't put yourself under pressure to within 2 years, 5 years, even 10 years to have the same life that you built over 30 or 40 years. Like, it just doesn't work. And it's the same thing with young people. Like, you think, well, I've gone to university or college or whatever it is, I've done the work. Why am I not more successful? It takes time. A lot of things do take time, and we need to work through that impatience and that desire for instant gratification and instant success. It doesn't work that way. That's why the lottery is so popular and makes millions and millions daily, because people still want this instant success, instant gratification. Relationships are the same as well. It takes time to build a healthy, strong bond and connection, whether it's with even with your own children, with your spouse, with friends, whatever it is. A lot of things take time, and we need to be able to do that work in that required time without stressing ourselves out, without causing ourselves depression and anxiety and all sorts of difficulties because it's not happening instantly. These things should not happen instantly. So pace yourself, be patient and good and kind to yourself, and stay away from, like I said, that comparison and other traps that make you less grateful for the life that you have. Because now you're constantly, like we're talking about greener pastures and all of that, you're constantly looking for something else when what you have is worth so much. You just have to believe in it, invest in it, and do the work, and you will get there. So I just wanted to share that because that's some of the stuff I've been reflecting on as my birthday is coming up. So let's get into our questions and comments from listeners. Last week, I had shared, somebody had written in, and I said this week would start with that message before we moved on to the next one. So someone wrote, and we've been talking about codependency and what that looks like, and somebody from the Netherlands. So Olivia from the Netherlands wrote in and said codependencies in relationships can be toxic and draining. And what I said was they most definitely are toxic and draining. There's no question if they can be or not, especially if you're the one who thinks that this is a healthy relationship. You're trying everything you can, but you keep getting pulled into this cycle of toxic behavior and manipulation and control and all sorts of things. So this writer from the Netherlands said that she's happy. The name is Olivia. So they say that they're happy that I touched on it and asked that I unpack 3 types of codependencies: the fixer, the controller, and the apathetic. And what I said last week was I try and stay away from putting things or people and even pathologies in a box, because when we tend to do that, we miss quite a lot. So there are definitely people whose, I'll say, dominant or predominant behavior is the fixing. So in other words, and we've talked about this before, those people that they tend to take over your whole life, start making decisions for you, start telling you how to live your life, start like fixing you. And you were fine. You thought like, okay, this person sees me for who I am, and sometimes that fixing is not, it's not even coming across as fixing. Sometimes it's little comments and criticisms that make you doubt yourself, that make you lose your confidence and depend more and more on them. So you've always cooked, let's say, your mashed potatoes a certain way, and you love it, you enjoy it, people have complimented you on it, and you actually think like, yeah, I'm really good at making mashed potatoes. And then this fixer comes along because you have this confidence in this thing. And what they want is to make you feel less confident and completely reliant on them. So they'll say something like, maybe next time, oh, these potatoes are really good, but maybe next time try a little this, or maybe next time. So it can be subtle, but over time you start to see that you've been making so many changes because nothing you do ever feels good enough for them. Compliments even come with, oh, that skirt looks really nice on you, but I think the one you wore last week, and yet when you wore that one last week, they had something to fix that as well. So it's this constant little comments and criticisms, that start to erode your confidence and self-esteem. And their desire is for you to become more reliant on them. They become the expert. They become the one you should run to when anything happens, when anything comes up. So they make you into their image, what will work for them. The minute you show independence, they will be insulted, they will be hurt, they will try and manipulate the situation. A lot of gaslighting happens actually with the fixer, because the minute you say, like, you don't agree with their opinion, no thank you, I can do it myself, they'll say things like, well, I was only trying to help, I only do this out of love. And then you start to feel guilty for asserting your own opinions and independence and all of that. So those are some of the patterns that emerge in co-relationships with people who use that fixing relationship dynamic. You are a project for them, but it's not because there's something wrong with you or wrong with the things you do. It's because you actually are confident and you actually have been doing well and okay. But they want you to believe that without them, life would be a lot worse. So let's watch out for some of those fixing tendencies. Now, I'm not saying it's not okay. I'm for people to support you and correct you, and like, healthy constructive criticism is not meant to make you feel incompetent. It's meant to make you feel, okay, yeah, I can definitely do better. Oh, okay, so this is great. Like, you actually feel more confident when you get constructive, healthy criticism, because it is supposed to build you up, not tear you down so you become reliant. And something we said in the past about codependency is, for a lot of codependent people, it doesn't start suddenly in relationships in adulthood. It's normally something that is attached even to their upbringing. They might have been raised by a fixer themselves, and so they've learned that this is how you relate. So because they never had any confidence, they were always being fixed, always being criticized, always being having their wrongs pointed out. They learn that, oh, okay, so this is how you take control. And because it's being done, let's say, by a mother, a father, maybe an older sibling, or somebody who has that authority and crucial position in their lives, they've come to attach fixing with crucial relationships. So if they're going to stay in your life, then they have to be a fixer, or they have to fix, or they have to relate to you in a certain way because that's what they learned. So some of it is coming from that. And because they grew up being fixed, they also have extremely low self-esteem. They also have extremely low confidence and cannot self-validate themselves. And they get their validation from looking at you as somewhat inferior and unable to do, and this person needs me, and I'm going to show them how much they need me. And that's how they validate themselves, because that's what they were exposed to. Then you have the let's see what else they said, the controller. Okay, so with the controller, there's a lot of that. There's some fixing as well, and that's why I said you don't, like, this is a fixer and that's it. These behaviors are often interconnected, and like I said last week, what happens is, as they go from one relationship to the other, they adapt. Okay, so in this relationship I was too focused on this and that didn't work, so they change a little bit and evolve a little bit, adapt a little bit. So you won't see the same attitude presented the same way. And it's not because the attitude has changed, it's just how it is done now is a little bit different, because they learned. Now, these are people who've been learning, right, all as they go. So they can learn, like, oh, okay, so in the last relationship, because if we're talking romantic relationships, for example, and maybe you did have that tendency to fix, and the person you're with actually pointed that out, like, I'm tired of you trying to fix me, da, da, da. The next relationship, they won't do that. They'll change tactics, but it's still the same codependency, right? So that maybe they won't fix, maybe they will become desperate to be fixed and helpless and all of this, or passive aggressive. Now they're not criticizing and saying, they're just acting passive aggressive. And so it changes with relationships. It changes based on how successful one tactic was in that relationship and so forth. So the person who has the tendency to control, the controller, it's self-explanatory. They manipulate, they will lie, they will cajole, they will do whatever to control the situation, but also the relationship. It has to go the way they want. So examples will be, you've started dating, for example, they decide when, okay, we're now official. Okay, now you have to post me on all your social media. Okay, now you have to introduce me to all your parents. And it's almost regimented. And if it doesn't work the way they want, they will battle you, they will fight you, they will wear you down until you give them that control. So sometimes you end up wondering, like, how on earth did I get here? I wasn't ready for this. But it's that controlling behavior that if you don't comply, there's punishment, there's fights, there's aggression, there's things like the silent treatment and all of these things, because you're not complying with what they want. So again, they might use that forceful control, or it might be more manipulative. You say, well, I'm not quite ready for that yet, and they will cry, you don't love me, and da da da, and for weeks they're moaning and crying and playing on your guilt and your conscience and all of this until you give in. So again, it's about things have to happen the way they want. And if you don't comply, it's battles, it's fighting until you give in. And these people are often the ones that will also want to control even like your beliefs, your values. They go like as deep as they possibly can. And what it is that fear that if things are not going the way that I want, then this relationship is going to end, this person will leave me. So there's fear of abandonment, there's attachment issues, there's a lot going on. There's anxiety. So these people tend to want to control every aspect of the relationship. There's no spontaneity. There's like even what you might think is romantic on the outside has been carefully crafted and controlled into happening. So you start to feel like just an object within that relationship. Like this is the role you're supposed to play. This is how you're supposed to dress, how you're supposed to speak to me, when you're supposed to kiss me, how you're supposed to declare your love, and all of this. And really, what it's about is mostly fear of abandonment, fear of them losing control themselves, so they control you so they don't lose control. A lot of obsessional thoughts and negative thoughts that they try and drive away by controlling the situation. And then the apathetic is people that no matter what you do, they can't respond. And so you find yourself doing extra, going the extra mile because you're trying to get something close to a normal human response. And you get tired and exhausted by bringing your best self into a situation where that person, it's like they couldn't care less. And yet when you try and separate yourself from them, they won't allow that. They want you stuck in that relationship where your needs are not being met, where it's like they couldn't care less, where you're doing all the work and they're hardly doing anything, and they don't want to let you go. So these are the people that they're constantly comparing themselves to you, right? So if you have ever been in a relationship with a partner who is jealous of you, who withholds affection and love, who just, you always have this feeling that this person just couldn't care less. But why do they keep coming? What do they want? And so when you think like, okay, this relationship, I'm moving on, they don't let you. Oh, but I love you. I thought we had a good thing. And you have not been getting that at all from their behavior. And they tend to want you to feel sorry for them and to feel responsible for their happiness. And that's why it's so draining, because you're doing all this work. They're hardly doing anything. And then it's like it's your fault they're not happy. It's your fault things are not going well. And you're constantly confused and tired by the relationship. So I'll leave it there for that, so that we can read some of the more recent messages that came in. So again, we always want to hear from you. You can call us, text us, let us know what's been going on for you. Share your experiences, share your thoughts with Love Bay Radio and everybody else out there who is listening. 437-778-3299 or infolovebay@gmail.com. Okay, so back to this week's questions. Okay, I think the furthest might be Manchester, UK. So we got a message from Manchester, UK, and this person was listening last week when I mentioned The Love Languages by Gary Chapman. And like I said last week, I haven't read the book in a while. And this was in response to somebody who had written in saying their boyfriend, they've been together for, I think they said, a year and a half. And he's just so demonstrative, so attentive, but he just doesn't say, I love you. And I mentioned that sometimes it's about people's love languages. And so this writer wrote in to say, um, there are 5 love languages you briefly touched on yesterday. I hope you'll have time to speak to all of them. It won't be this week, unfortunately, and sorry to the listener in the UK, but we can definitely circle back at some point. So thank you for listing them as well and saying briefly what each one is about. So there's words of affirmation, which is saying positive, supportive things to your partner. So that can include like even saying I love you and complimenting your partner and letting them know. And the good thing about being in a relationship with somebody who is sincere with their words of affirmation is you really know what they think of you and what they value about you, what they admire about you, and that's always nice to hear. So we do understand why sometimes people want to, like, you can show it a million ways, but sometimes hearing it is affirming. Um, so maybe for that writer who wrote to us, they appreciate words of affirmation. And what I said was, it looks like from what she described that this person does love them, but it might be something he has to grow into, that saying I love you. And the thing is, that's what relationships are. The way you love each other at the beginning won't be the way you love each other in 20 years, in 40 years. Love grows and evolves and adapts as well, like we said earlier, and in healthy ways. So another love language is quality time, which is about spending time with your partner, and you're not on your phone, you're not watching TV, or if you are watching TV, you make that special. So that time you're together, that people who value quality time put the quality factor into it. It's not just, yeah, we're in the same room, we're in the same house, we're on the same couch. You actually experience the quality of being in each other's presence. Then there's physical touch, which it does include sexual, but a lot of it is about hugs and physical gestures that express that I'm here, I see you, I'm close to you, I understand you, I love you through touch. They tend to be more affectionate physically, hugging, kissing, cuddling, and all of that. Um, and then acts of service. These are the people who tend to anticipate your needs. And it sounds like this boyfriend that this person had written into is about acts of service, because she said when she was sick, he came over, I think, with soup and tissues and Kleenex and all of that. And so those are acts of service where you anticipate your partner's needs and you serve them, and you find great joy in serving them and demonstrating your love through that service. And then there's receiving gifts. Now, receiving gifts is different from giving gifts. There's some people, it's really important that you show your love and affection. Now, we're not talking gold diggers and materialistic, selfish people. Those are just gold diggers and people who are materialistic and all. But the receiving gifts, it could be like even a small, it's the fact that you thought of them. It can be something you made, it can be a simple card, it can be almost anything. It's the fact that it's being presented as a gift that matters, not how much it costs, not what it costs or looks like, or is it trendy enough. And those are gold diggers and materialistic, selfish people. And it's really important that you know the difference, because you will go broke showering certain people with gifts and they will never be satisfied, because their requirement of gifts is not about love, but about materials and things. Okay. And then, of course, again, like I always say, it's not about putting people in a box. Just like I like quality time. I like physical time. I like all of that, right? So it's just that there are some traits that are more dominant than others. I will put it that way. And over time, that could change as well. Because when you meet someone and you start to understand, and sometimes it's because we never experienced it. If you didn't grow up in a home with words of affirmation, it probably won't come naturally. And then suddenly you're in this relationship, you're exposed to it, and you discover, oh my goodness, I love words of affirmation. I love it when my partner compliments me and does this and says that and hypes me up and all. So it's not set in stone. And at different periods in our lives, you might be a healthy, strong person. You get sick, something happens, and now those acts of service actually mean a lot more because you're limited in what you can do for yourself, and your partner is now meeting your needs through acts of service. So again, don't put yourself in a box and say, I'm about physical touch, I don't care about all. Sometimes it's circumstances and time and other factors that influence the language we use in expressing our love. Okay, so that's as much as I'll say about that this week. Let me see. Okay, let's go to Barbados for a bit. So this writer from Bell Gully, Barbados, said you discussed boundaries in a previous episode. I would appreciate it if you could revisit the topic of boundaries. It should become a central theme of your program. Thank you for that to our listener in Barbados. And we did discuss boundaries. I think we do, it comes up a lot. Even as we were talking about codependency, one of the ways to kind of resolve some of those codependent behaviors, because like I said, it might be that you're married to a codependent person. I'm not saying go and divorce them, but there's things you can do to move your relationship towards something healthier and sustainable and fulfilling for both of you. And one of those things is boundaries, right? So imagine with the apathetic, with the controlling, with the fixing, boundaries, good, healthy boundaries can resolve some of those things, because you start to, first of all, when you're establishing boundaries, you start to express what is acceptable and not acceptable. But you also, and like I've always said, boundaries are not about keeping things out. They're about protecting what's within, right? So you're married to a person, you're realizing maybe through the mental health hour that, okay, this is definitely a codependent relationship. Most of them don't last. If you've been married to a codependent person, you've been, I'm just recalling one couple, they'd been together 15 years. It was definitely codependent. And they would have like really, really intense and harsh seasons. But because they had made those vows and all that, they were sticking to it, they were working on it. And some of the work we did was around boundaries and then around communication. And slowly we started to change some of those toxic behaviors so that their relationship was a lot more sustainable, a lot more fulfilling. There were still issues. I don't know if it ever completely goes away. I don't think so. But I think things can definitely improve with the right boundaries, with the right communication. So boundaries are not about keeping things out. When we're talking about boundaries in relationships, it's about protection. You are protecting the relationship. You're protecting yourself in that relationship. You're protecting your person or your spouse or partner within that relationship. And so sometimes that protection looks like keeping people away, keeping things out. But really, if you want to have healthy, sustainable boundaries in your relationship, it's not about keeping people and other things out. It's about protecting that relationship. And why I say this, think about it. Let's say you decide in your relationship, and some people do this, I've heard of this. Neither of us will have friends of the opposite sex because it might present challenges on your fidelity towards each other. So you might start off that way. So what you're saying is, I, as a woman, will not have any male friends, and my spouse would not have any female friends because it might compromise your fidelity towards each other. So that is one way you might place a boundary. Whether you agree with it or not, I'm just using it as an example. What you're trying to do is protect each other from temptations you might not be able to and to resist. And you might do this at the beginning of your relationship when you're maybe still trying to get more what's the word, when you're trying to build a solid foundation, right? 5 years, 6 years down the line, you might look at that boundary and think like, okay, we're at that stage in our relationship where we have confidence in each other and ourselves that we will not violate that trust. We will not cheat. We will not succumb to some weird, wild temptation in the opposite sex. So then it's not necessarily that you'll say, yeah, now you can go have as many male friends as you want and have as many female friends as you want. My point here is you took that decision together to say, let's protect our relationship. Let's make it a lot more solid without some of those trust issues. And this could happen especially where there has been some infidelity or some cause to worry about infidelity. So you put that boundary in place. And it's not about, because sometimes what happens is we put a name and a face to the temptation. Oh, I saw you with Jill last week. You guys were, so no more talking to Jill. It's not about Jill, it's about your relationship. So your boundaries shouldn't be about no more talking to Jill. They should be about how do we protect what we have from the Jills and Jacks of this world that might cause us some issues or problems. So always think of boundaries in terms of protecting your relationship, not of keeping this person and that person out, not of forbidding and withholding things from each other. Because the moment you start doing that, what that turns you into is the police. You start policing each other. Who are you talking to? What were you doing? Where did you go? And you're saying this as if those are boundaries. That those are not boundaries, definitely not healthy boundaries. That is policing. And you don't want to be a police officer in your relationship. You don't want to take that position of law enforcement in your relationship. So really think about, when we agree on this boundary, what is the point? It's to protect, not to forbid, not to shut off, not to limit. It's to protect. And if you put your boundaries in that light every single time, they become more sustainable, they become healthier, and they work. Because it's not about Jill, it's about your relationship. So maybe he will continue being friends with Jill and that, but you've put some boundaries in there, like that help the situation. So I'm just trying to use a simple example there. Moving on, we've been to Manchester, we've been to Barbados. Let's go to Oregon in the US. Okay, so codependency in a relationship isn't inherently negative. Oh my goodness. So this person is saying codependency isn't inherently negative. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. Let's not try and downplay the challenges and difficulties we have in relationships. It's nice to think positive, to talk positive, and all of that, but let's be realistic and honest and grow in our knowledge and understanding of some of these things. Codependency is never positive, is never healthy, is never sustainable. It just doesn't work. It is negative, it is inherently negative. Absolutely. And this person is saying, I believe that clear communication and the establishment of healthy boundaries. Well, once you have that, then you don't have codependency. So, thanks to our writer from, I think it's Oregon, US, but you are kind of contradicting yourself there, because if you're talking clear communication, establishment of healthy boundaries, effective steps towards resolving codependency, then it's not negative. Once you have those things and a healthy relationship, then it's no longer codependent. So, yes, codependency is inherently negative. And I agree that through clear communication and the establishment of healthy boundaries and other things, therapy, because a lot of codependent people ended up that way in relationships because of some trauma, some harm, some difficult relationships they had to endure. So this is how they learned to be in a relationship. Like I said earlier, it might have been that's how their parents treated them and raised them. So they think that is what it should be. This is how I need to be, right? So also going for therapy as individuals is good, because it helps us work through some of those, especially in our childhood, adolescent, early relationships. Because the thing is, similar to people with borderline personality disorder, which we've talked about a few times, and there is a high I'll say correlation between borderline personality disorder and codependency. You find a lot of people with borderline personality disorder are actually codependent in their relationships. And most of these people became that way due to a trauma or some harm that was done to them. So they cannot function in a healthy way in relationships because maybe they never experienced it. Maybe they were abused. People that experienced physical, sexual, and different types of abuse in childhood are at higher risk for codependency and are at higher risk for borderline personality disorder. So if you do, and I've said this before, when we're talking about these things and you're listening to it and you're being honest with yourself and you see that, oh my goodness, I am codependent, go get help, go for therapy, do the work, become a healthier version of yourself, develop that self-esteem, that self-affirmation and validation, that self-worth, develop those communication skills, develop that ability to establish and maintain healthy boundaries, do the work, and your relationships will be better. They will improve. You might still have moments here and there where things are challenging, where you make some of those old mistakes, because, yeah, we're all human in that. But in many cases, and I've seen this and experienced it through some of my clients, but also as a human being myself, I think one privilege, I'll say privilege, I have in being a therapist is I get to examine myself quite a lot. Sometimes a client is talking about, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that sounds like me. So for me, it's an opportunity to also look at myself. And as I'm helping my client, I'm also helping myself. Does that mean I'm perfect now and I'm the best person you could ever be in a relationship with? No. It would be nice, but no. But it does mean that I'm doing the work. We all have work to do. We all absolutely have work to do. And I've always said, and other therapists have said, and I think it was Sigmund Freud who also said it, that at some point in life, everybody needs a therapist, because we are in this world, and this world has challenges and barriers and racism and sexism and abuse and all sorts of horrible things that really tax our souls and our spirits and our mental health. So don't be afraid to own up to, this is me. I am definitely codependent. My relationship ended last year because of some of these things I was doing. Be honest with yourself and go do the work. Go and do that work. And the person who will benefit from it the most is you, because the next relationship you have will be better. You can come into it with a lot more confidence. So you're not being manipulative, you're not being controlling, you're not trying to fix and being apathetic and all of that. You've done the work. You have done the work, and you've worked on your self-esteem. And I said before that the thing with self-esteem is it's not a stagnant thing that you have it today and it's the same amount, and all. There are things that will happen in life that sometimes, yeah, your self-esteem gets a hit. But do the work. Do the work and you will be rewarded, like honesty. And then finally, let's see if we can go through this in the last 8 minutes. From Sherbrooke, PQ. Where's PQ? I have no idea. Is that the province? PQ. Anyway, this writer says, I had a bad breakup. I had a bad breakup last year and gained lots of weight. Before that, I cooked for my fiance almost every day, which did not help with my weight. The breakup left me in a dark place, especially having to explain to my son that we are no longer a family. My newfound strength has taken me to a place of resilience. I am doing my self-care through strength and resilience. I've lost over 20 pounds so far, and I'm feeling great. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. For anyone who has had a bad breakup, there is hope. I never thought I would get through the embarrassment of having to face my family. Now they do not talk about my failed relationship, they talk about my weight loss. Congratulations to you. Really well done. And this is what I'm talking about with self-esteem. You do go through certain things, but you bounce back and you can refocus your energy. And because when we think, like she mentioned, or they mentioned here, that they had a fiance, that means they had hopes of marriage and a long-term relationship, and then that comes to an end and it's a knock. But they picked themselves up, started to focus on what they can control. And this is the thing. Sometimes in our relationships, especially in situations like breakups and all of that, one of the things that hurts the most is that we can't do anything about it. And we have to be willing to let go. We have to let go, because I remember some weeks ago, somebody wrote and said they had been dating this guy and they think this guy dumped them just before Valentine's, and they were going to go and look for this guy's previous girlfriends and create a lot of drama. That's not wanting to lose control, to let go. So you have to be able to let go of your dreams, of your hopes in this relationship, and focus on what you can control, which is your response. In this case, for this person, their weight loss journey. It's completely up to them. And so they channeled some of that loss of control into what they could control. And like they said, their family doesn't talk about the failed relationship anymore. They talk about the weight loss. And I'm sure it's in a positive way with lots of cheering and support. But when you refuse to let go and you keep holding on tighter when the relationship is done, maybe they rejected you, maybe they betrayed you. I don't know why this relationship ended, but she actually puts bad in caps, and it's bolded and it's underlined. So I'm pretty sure it was horrendous. It was horrible. But if you focus on the things you can't change, the things you can't control, you will have a hard time moving on with your life. And you will have a hard time even experiencing new relationships. So I really do applaud you, Hope in Sherbrooke, PQ, wherever that is, for that self-care, working through your breakup to a point of strength and resilience, channeling your efforts into something that is obviously beneficial and healthy. And I have to say, I think this is great role modeling for your child, for your son. I think that's absolutely great role modeling, that you're showing them that sometimes things get bad, but it's not the end. Things also get better. Just make a decision on where you want to put your strength and energy. This person could have turned that energy that they used to lose the weight into stalking and fighting. And like I've had some clients, like 2 years down the line, they've been separated, divorce has been filed and finalized, and they're still fighting. And it's like, the point of breaking up is to stop fighting, is to end the relationship, whatever condition it was. You were married, you were living under the same room, you were fighting all the time. Now you're fully divorced, living in separate, but you're still fighting. Then why did you bother getting divorced? You should have just stayed together and continued fighting. But when a relationship ends, then you have to let it come to an end. Sometimes that's a little more difficult because maybe you have children together and all of that. But even that needs to be negotiated in a way that you're not bickering over the children just because you're still fighting over the marriage. Let things go. Channel your energy into something that is beneficial to you, your mental health, and people around you. If this person had carried on focusing on this bad breakup, it would be even impacting their relationship with their family, because they said, I never thought I would get through the embarrassment of having to face my family. So it would have still impacted their relationship with their family because they're not letting go. You have to let go. And I'm not saying it's easy, but you have to let go. Let go. Stop trying to control the narrative. Stop trying to one-up each other. Stop trying to get the final word. Even stop trying to get closure. Some years ago, somebody talked to me about closure after they broke up. And I said, like, we talk about this closure like we're entitled to it. We actually aren't. Nobody owes us closure, especially not the person that you just broke up with. It's nice if you can get it. And sometimes you think you got it and then you realize, no, that's a deep fake of closure. It's not real closure. Listen, be willing and able and ready to move on, whether you have closure or not. Give yourself closure. And the way you do that is by, again, self-validating, looking internally. Do I need to go for therapy? What damage did this bad breakup do to me? What do I need to do to be healthy and happy? That's closure. And nobody owes it to you. Absolutely. You can't be talking to, oh, I demand closure. You owe me closure. The very least you could do is give me closure. Like, they were not faithful. They were not truthful. They didn't hold on to you. But somehow you think after disappointing you on all these levels, they will come through on closure. Like, really. Do for yourself. Lean into people, your support system, that are healthy, that are encouraging, that are affirming, but let go of this idea that I'm owed closure. You're not. You're not. Nobody owes you closure for anything. Move on. Do it for yourself. Okay, so our time is up. Thank you, Love Bay. Thank you to our listeners everywhere. Um, as always, do write into us 437-778-3299. infolovebay@gmail.com. Wishing you a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week ahead, and a great rest of April, the month of April. Yeah, be good to each other, be good to yourselves. Compassion is important. Good night.